Yeah. For what you got for like a hundred. Oh, geez, that's a great deal. Good evening, everyone. Well, today we're going to go. I know we were going to talk about two chapters, 14 and 15 and 16. Yeah, 14 and 15, something like that. But I only ended up doing one chapter because I found the second one about abortion just to be kind of gratuitous. So I took the one that was the most relevant, I thought, to what we're doing, and it's abortion, only one question. That's the chapter that we're covering. So I'd like to open up in prayer, and then we'll get moving from there. So Lord, we thank you, God, for the opportunity to come here today. And Lord, I know that there's many needs that are presented here. And God, I just ask that you would, in your way, minister the hearts and lives of the people that are here online. Lord, I know that I don't have to pray that because that's who you are. But Lord, we just ask that you would move. Help us to get out of the way, Lord, for that. And help us see the purpose that you have for us in reaching those around us. Lord, I just ask that you would continue to guide our study, Lord, as we learn how to deal with maybe some of these tough questions, God, and how to approach people, how to utilize questions in a way that's non-threatening so that we can till the ground or plant the seed, or do a little bit of gardening in the lives of individuals, God, so that we can help bring them to harvest. And pray that you would bless this time, Lord, in our conversations. We also ask, God, as Pastor has traveled today, that you would be with him, Lord, as he goes on his sabbatical, that you would speak to him and you direct him. I ask for you to do these things, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So I like this chapter. I think it was 15. Now I'm questioning myself whether I got the chapters right or not.
Oh.
You know?
Or if it was 16.
All right, so then it is 15.
Yeah.
Yep, 16 was Beyond the Basics. Okay, and then what we're doing is 17 next week, Marriage, Sex, Gender, and Common Sense. So I just mislabeled that when I sent it to you today. But.
Yeah, if you want to have a good argument with somebody, these last two chapters are really good chapters if you want to.
Hotbed information, right?
Yeah, these are the ones that'll set people off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to give a couple statistics out there and kind of see how you feel about it. There have been more than 64.4 million abortions since it became legal in 1973.
That, by the way, is the year I was born.
73?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was one of the lucky. Barely. No.
Man.
That's just 50 years ago.
Dark. Robin said you made it.
I got a certificate and everything. Congratulations, you survived childbirth.
I don't know what to say about that. But 64.4 million since 1973, and it's more than that. That's the most recent statistic I could find, right? So there are around 626,000 legal abortions every single year. That number is staggering. It's crazy. So just for comparison, it took Adolf Hitler 12 years to kill 6 million Jews. It took America 6 years to exceed Hitler's ghastly total in the killing of the unborn. At least 388,000 Africans were stolen from their homeland and made slaves over the course of 2.5 centuries. Now, America kills that number of babies in about 109 days. It's absurd. Abortion has killed more people than all the Allied soldiers, plus the Axis soldiers, plus all the civilian casualties in World War II. That's crazy. The most dangerous place for a baby in the United States is in their mother's womb. Isn't that insane? So we know this already. So what I'm going to say here is, those numbers are probably staggering or maybe eye-opening for you. But what I'm going to say next is not going to be. But the abortion issue is so decisive within our community, within our country. Most people, 52% of Americans, consider abortion to be an essential human right. That to me is interesting. We must use precisely placed questions to get those who support abortion to question the morality of it, because it's such a hot topic, right? It's so emotional, and it's hard to get through that emotion, but that's why I think this approach is so important, so that we can do that in a non-threatening way. So when we consider abortion, really there is only one question that matters. You may be asking yourself, what is that? We'll talk about that. But before that, just a little set up to that question. You know, people that are for abortion and people that are against abortion oftentimes get caught in the weeds, details, specific examples, things of that nature, right? There's so many rabbit holes that we can go down. Really easy to get sidetracked. And generally what happens is some emotional kind of thing gets brought up and they want you to defend that, right? A 9-year-old girl gets raped by her stepfather, is pregnant now, you're telling me she's gotta have that baby, and that to take that baby from this baby is immoral. It's like, okay, why don't you make the 9-year-old like mentally disabled and physically disabled too? It's like they use the most egregious kind of example, and then they paint the large brush, well, because that's okay, every abortion's okay, abortion flag, right? So it's really easy to get caught up in things like that, but there really is only one question that should be used to clarify for you, to make the job of ministering to the other person that much more easy. And that question is, what is inside the uterus of a pregnant woman? What is it? That's the question, right? What is it? So suppose you are busy with yard work and your child or your grandchild comes to you and asks you this question: Daddy, Mommy, Grandma, Grandpa, can I kill it? What is the first question you need to ask that child? What is it? Right? If it's a spider, you're probably going to give the go-ahead enthusiastically, right? If it's your little brother, then you have to have a conversation because it's not the same thing. But abortion precisely comes down to the basic question of what is it? Now, for most people, they're going to bring in other things. We call them red herrings, right? They're going to try to get you involved in some other conversation, not answer that, and then get you in an arguing match. Emotions flare up, and then nothing happens, right? If the thing that's inside the womb is only a clump of tissue and not human, then no justification for an abortion is required. We do this all the time, right? You have a lump, you have a tumor, you cut it out, you're not going to confession, you're not talking to the pastor or the priest, you know, you're not gauging public opinion if I should get this tumor out and what kind of damage is it doing to the tumor. No, clump of tissues, certainly you can remove that, no justification required. If the thing inside the womb is a human person, then there can be no justification for abortion. None whatsoever. If that person thinks it's okay to kill people, then there's a whole lot that person must do to explain it. Most people are not going to be cool saying it's okay to kill innocent people. Most people won't do that because what they attribute that to is people like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, right? Terrorist groups, really bad, really evil people, and they don't see themselves that way. Yeah. So I think this is why people that are for abortion fight so hard to say that the fetus is not a person, it is only a clump of cells, right? Because if that is true, then really what are we debating? Intuitively, people value human life. And that's why if you were to question them, is it okay to kill innocent human people? They would be like, no, absolutely not. That's ridiculous, right? To say people are not valuable or not any more valuable than an earthworm or a spider opens the door to atrocities that most people do not want to entertain or defend, right? And if someone is a proponent, someone is for abortion. And if they view that which was inside the mother as a life, as a human life, and if they say it's okay to extinguish that life, then a position that is at least honest and respectable is there is really no difference between a human and a monkey, a human and a cat, a human, a rat, a human, and a fruit fly in terms of value. We are just animals on the planet. Do what you will. I don't like that, but I can respect that opinion because it's consistent. It's when we play word games and we try to make the fetus into something other than human, right? That we kind of run into this problem. It's dishonest. And so people, because they wrestle with the idea of human beings not being valuable and they don't really want to say that, they go to that alternative. Questions on that at all? Comments, perhaps? Dan, if you want to add in, you can.
Well, it helps their conscience out. If it's not a human,
yeah,
it makes doing a horrible thing easier.
You don't say. Have we ever seen any of that in society? Serbian genocide? Slaves? Right? They're subhuman. Right? If you're subhuman, well, I could do all kinds of things to you because you're not really human. Right? Hitler did this with the Jews. It's a tactic that is used, and it's abhorrent, but it gets done. So what you'll encounter with people, because they don't want to say that humans are no more valuable than an amoeba, right? You'll encounter smoke screens within the argument, but see it for what they are. First, we'll go to Glenn, though. Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, years ago, they used to call it block of flesh.
Well, when...
Technology
Yeah.
came on, they could tell that it had hands or heartbeat at 6 weeks or whatever it was. Then they had to change the whole format.
Yes. So what Glenn said in the beginning, it was considered, the fetus was just considered blobs of flesh. And so in 73, Roe versus Wade, that is some of the terminology, I think blobs of cell was some of the terminology that was used. But of course, since 1973, which is over 50 years.
It's 50 exactly.
In a few days.
Yeah.
So it's over.
Yeah.
Okay, so what has happened since then is technology has progressed so rapidly, right? It used to be, and Tammy, you could tell me, when you did sonograms, right, they looked vastly different. It was like seeing sonar or something from, the old times. And then when my kids came in, we had like 3D pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, right? Amazing. And besides that, science has progressed so far that even these blobs of flesh or blobs of cells, we know more about cells, and they're astonishing. So it's hard, but the old kind of concept is still out there, that they're just blobs of cells, nothing more. But science is showing how intricate these cells are. And like Glenn was saying, he's like, after 6 weeks, the heartbeats, and they could detect that, so now they have to change the narrative somewhat, right? And so that's what you'll keep seeing is they move the goalposts once there's more discoveries, or they'll find some way to manipulate or twist that data so it doesn't appear to be I'm murdering somebody, right? Because we can't sit with that. We can sit with taking out an unwanted tissue, an invasive species, so to say. Those sort of things we're okay with. I'm not. Just be clear for those that are online, I'm not okay with that. Did you want to say anything to that, Dan?
I was going to say, well, science is also getting to the point where babies are earlier and earlier. The premature babies are being able to be out of the womb and survive at earlier stages than ever before.
Right,
so it's
technology.
Yeah, so it's reducing that time frame where they could say, well, it can't survive on its own.
Yeah.
So
It's not
even
viable,
that
sort of
is,
thing.
they can't use that argument
Yes.
half the time anymore.
So again, you got to be aware and prepared for smoke screens, that are designed to take you off-road and into emotional pitfalls, okay? So what kind of opening questions might you use with someone that's like, you know what, abortion should be legal, in all situations, or abortion is not killing a baby, it's just removing a medical problem, a clump of cells, things like that. What kind of opening questions might you think of? Go ahead, Ben. How do you define a baby, right? What else would you consider? One you might consider is, well, when do you think life actually starts, right? When is life, when does it come from a blob of cells to a viable life, right? When does that happen? What else, right? Who created that life or that blob, right? What else might you be able to ask question-wise? That's a statement, you wouldn't have to kill it unless it was living, is a statement less a question. I'm looking for a question. The question could be, when the abortion happens, is it killing life? Is it killing cells, those cells? That would be a question you could ask. Someone had their hand up, I don't know who was. Have you thought about adoption? That might be a little later down the conversation, but you could ask something. Yeah, go ahead, Tammy. What is added to the womb besides time to create that life? That's I never thought about that one. That's a pretty good one. What else might you be able to ask? Do you realize what you're about to do? There isn't going back on that one. Go ahead, Robin. What makes this a medical problem in your expertise or your understanding? You could also ask something, it's a pretty strong opinion that you had. Can I ask you, what you're basing it off of, what you're basing that opinion or that stance, how'd you get there, right? And kind of see where they're processing it. What kind of studies did you read, to go through to get to where you are saying that abortion's not exterminating life, it's just taking care of cells or things of that nature, right? So those are some good questions there, but I think that's good. So here's some sample opening questions. So when you say abortion should be legal for all circumstances, I have one question to ask. What is a fetus exactly? Here's my thinking. If the unborn is not a human being, then no justification is needed for removing it. Do you agree with that? So bring it back to that. What is it? Right? That's the one question, the important question that you get to at some point. So remember, the very first tactic in questions is the what questions. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit further? You want to understand where they're coming from. Once you understand where they're coming from and you're sure that you're not misunderstanding definitions and things of that nature, then it's the why. Why did you get there? What were some of the things that led you to come to that conclusion, right? And then here you can hit them with what is a fetus exactly, right? Go ahead, John.
What's our ultimate goal here? To bring to light this person's ignorance or self-centeredness?
Well,
So with a person who is firmly believing that abortion should be a woman's right.
yes.
I think recently in the past, Kamala Harris, there was some action in Arizona and Florida the same week in regards to abortion.
Yeah.
I think Florida totally outlawed, and Arizona since the 70s accepted it. And she made a comment to the fact that, this is the way a lot of people feel, it's a woman's body. They don't understand how a woman's body works, or that it's a woman's right to do with whatever she wants with her body. And that's the mentality, right?
Yeah.
So when someone has a mentality that holds that position, what am I trying to show them with themselves without being too aggressive, without being too
Yeah.
offensive, to say, like, I want to show you ignorance. Is that our goal? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, we're not telling them we want to show ignorance. So John's question is, what is my goal here? What's the end game?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like ultimately we stand on the truth that
Yes.
all things are created
Right.
We're the voice for that.
For that being. Yes. And so I think first of all, you're probably not going to convince someone who's so staunchly a supporter of abortion in one conversation that they're wrong and have them recant and see the errors of their way and now follow, right? So the idea in any of our conversations, whatever the topic subject is to just get them thinking differently. Have them confront what their belief is and say, is this true? Like, I don't feel comfortable a little bit what they said, and have them like a stone in the shoe, make it uncomfortable, a little uncomfortable for them. Right, so the idea is to challenge the notion, again, it's not a child. What is it then? What is the support for what you're saying? How is it and why is it that you got to that position, right? And then you may know about this, you may know some more scientific kind of facts to support that it is alive, right? And there may be some arguments there that you can go through. You're not trying to club someone, but you're trying to get them to look from what they're so focused on and be like, oh, do I have the whole issue here, or is there something else that could also be true? Ben, you want to say something? How can the debate lead them to Jesus? Well, I think quite naturally, if you can get them to see that what they're claiming isn't life is life, first, that's a big victory, right? And then, is it okay to exterminate human life? And what are the reasons that would be okay? If you can get them to see that, no, we can't take human life just because we want to, because it's inconvenient for us, that's morally wrong. Oh, where does morality come from? Right? Ooh. Then you get into conversations about objective morality. Oh, objective morality can only exist if there's God, right? It can lead to that.
We're all made in the image of God.
We are
At
all
what
made.
point is the baby not made in the image of God?
Yeah.
That's a way to also kind of lead into it. I think the best thing is just to get them to admit that it's a living human being.
Right.
That would go a huge part.
Far away.
I've even gotten to the point with conversations like you won't get them to disagree with abortion, but you can get them to admit when it's a baby, when it's a human life and they shouldn't take it. Because a lot of them, even when it's in the womb, will agree that it's a human baby. Like late term, they don't believe that you should be able to abort a baby. But if you could get them to agree that it's a baby, then, because most of the abortions, they push up until when it's born.
Time delivery.
Actually, I think it's 30 days after now, if there's a medical issue with the child.
30 days after.
Yeah, in New York and in California
That
now.
does not surprise me, New York and California.
If there's a medical
state.
problem with the child, that you can euthanize the child so it doesn't live with it. Yeah.
Like it's a dog,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
a bad dog.
I believe that law was passed. I'm
I'd have to
pretty
look at
certain
that. That would
it's
be really scary.
it's like 27 days or something like that. It's
That
something.
is so scary.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
insanity. See, it's a slippery slope, and so
Right.
listen, right? Not get rid of the 2-year-old. And so that's if you would have said to people in 1973, this is the stuff that would come of it, they'd be like, "You're crazy. That's insane." But no, it happens that way.
Right.
Because this is how Satan works. You give an inch, and he ends up taking the whole mile.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You give him your sock, and all of a sudden, you're naked. That's how it goes. And he doesn't stop at a sock, right? It's terrible. But that's I have to look into that, because that is nuts if that's true. Holy cow. I'm not saying you're a liar.
No,
I'm
no.
saying I have to look
I know there was a law that they're trying to pass. I believe it was, but it's either been passed or they're trying to push that through.
Yeah.
Somebody could look it up.
So, what are we? I got off track here, but that's okay,
Yeah.
right? We talked about the question: what is
The
a
whys
fetus?
and yeah,
What is a
yeah.
fetus exactly? Here's my thinking: if the unborn is not a human being, then no justification is needed to remove it. Do you agree with that? They're generally going to agree with that, and they'll even double down probably, but that affirming that an unborn baby is not a baby, which is interesting. An unborn baby's not a baby. Well, it's in the words. But that's okay. So another opening. Good. Well, Next, if the unborn is a human being, then no justification can be made for killing that unborn child. Do you agree with that? So that's a build on to what we just talked about. This is where you'll get the objection. Follow the line of reason and use questions to get them to defend what the unborn child really is, right? Use lots of what questions here. When they are clear on that, then use why questions to get them to defend their position. And then you can weave in more pointed questions to try to get them to see the error of what they're thinking, okay? People will attempt to bring other topics in the conversation when they feel uncomfortable with the questions that you are asking, so be aware of that. Some of these side topics can include nobody should tell a woman what she should do with her body, okay? Abortion is a private medical issue between a woman and her doctor. That's something you'll see. Pages are sticking here. Come on. All right. Bringing an unwanted child into this world is a burden on society and too expensive. A woman should not be forced to bring an unwanted child into this world. Many poor women cannot afford to take care of another child. You should not force your morality on women. So those are all kind of sayings, and these generally come when they start to feel uncomfortable with the question, and now they're kind of going out to throw you off and get into an emotional debate, because they probably have examples of how it's unfair because of Samantha that she knows from 4th grade or whatever, okay? Notice you do not have to fight all of these topics. You don't. If you ask that one question and you keep coming back to that, it really takes care of the rest of them. Answering the question, what is the unborn, addresses virtually all the other questions. Bring it back to that. So let me read some of the responses to, nobody should tell a woman what she should do with her body. Right, I get that. I agree with that. It makes perfect sense if what's inside her uterus is nothing. Then you're right. But we haven't come up with the answer to that yet. What do you think a pregnant mother is carrying in her uterus? Bring it back, right? Abortion is a private medical issue between a woman and her doctor. I can respect a woman making a medical decision about her own body, but that's not what we're talking about here. We haven't concluded anything yet. Do you think parents should have the right to abuse their child if done in privacy or with the consent of their doctor? Right? What is inside of her? Bringing an unwanted child into this world is a burden on society and too expensive. I can see what you're saying, but we're not really talking about finances. We're talking about the unborn and if the thing inside of a woman is human or not. You talked about the unborn as a burden on society. Let me ask you a question. The homeless are a burden on society. Would it be okay to kill a homeless man because he's a burden on society? Right? So again, what is inside of the woman? If she could say it is a person, well, then do you agree that it's okay to kill a homeless man because he's a burden? She's going to say no. He's going to say no. A woman should not be forced to bring an unwanted child into this world. I can understand your point that bringing an unwanted child into the family would be difficult, but that's not exactly what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether they are wanted or unwanted. We're talking about whether the unborn is a human being or not. Let me ask you a question. Would it be okay for a father to kill his toddler simply because he no longer wanted to care for her, or felt she was a burden to the family? Would it be okay in that situation? So what do you think is inside? If that's not okay, what do you think is inside of a woman? Many poor women cannot afford to take care of another child. I get that. However, the finance of the parent is not what we're discussing. We're discussing whether the unborn is a human being or not. Let me ask you a question. Would it be okay for a mother to kill her 3 children simply because she lost her job and was unable to financially support them? You should not force your morality on women. I get what you're saying, but we haven't gotten there yet. We're talking about the unborn and if they are human or not. We have to answer the question before we can discuss the morality question and if it's appropriate to force morality on others. Let me ask you a question. Should I have the right to murder people based off of my financial situation, or if I thought they were inconvenient? What is inside of a mother? Right? Keep bringing it back to that. Because if it's a human being, the homeless man that's inconvenient, you can't kill him, then why can you kill a baby? The finances, if you can't murder your 10-year-old and 11-year-old and 14-year-old because you lost your job, then why can you do it for a baby? Right? You see how it's all taken care of in those answers? And it puts them in a dilemma. And that's where you want to put the pebble in their shoe, because then they're like, I don't have a good answer for this. Right? It makes a little bit of a difference.
Well, the answer they'd have to give makes them look bad.
Yes, the answer makes them look like monsters.
Right.
Because if it's okay to do that to a baby, then it's okay to do that to a homeless person, and they're not going to feel comfortable saying he's a burden. Take care of him. Right? Exactly. So, the tactic that we just read, and the way that we address that, it's called trotting out the toddler. For any reason a person gives for abortion, ask if the same reason would justify killing a toddler. Right? At this point, we're not saying abortion is wrong. We are clarifying the issue. And there's moral logic. And John, if you can show the moral portion up here. So, premise number one, it's wrong to intentionally take the life of an innocent human being. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Most would.
Premise two, abortion intentionally takes the life of an innocent human being. Would you agree with that? So therefore, the conclusion is abortion is wrong. That's a sound logical argument, right? So, people that are for abortion, generally, if they're going to attack one of the two premises, which one will they attack, do you think? Two. Right. So, John, can you roll to the next one? So, this one is, they will agree with premise one. It's wrong to intentionally take the life of an innocent human being. But now they change premise number two. Abortion does not take the life of an innocent human being. It's just a clump of flesh. It's just a fetus. It's not a real person. Therefore, abortion is not wrong. Yeah, you see what they do there? They change that up. So, it will be important to form your questions in a way that help your friend see what they call subhuman is actually human. The cells, in other words, within the mother's body are not just clumps, but they're active, they're alive, and they're growing. I think science shows that out. It doesn't say abortion's wrong, but the cells are living, they're alive, and they're forming, and they're splitting, and they're developing. That's life, right? Yes, that's the second argument. It's distinct from the mother with its own copy of its own sequence of DNA. Right, but if it's not separate from the mother, then it would also be the mother, and therefore abortion wouldn't apply. It would just be like cancer cells, right? So not only are the cells alive, splitting, growing, changing, right? It's separate and distinct from the mother's body. It's got its own DNA code, and it is an individual human being. And that life started at conception, because that's the most logical case, because you can't explain how else life automatically comes, except from that when the sperm enters the egg and that change happens right there, right? It's the most logical, consistent way. So I'd like to read here our abortion is, where am I right now? I lost my page.
232.
Just a sample argument from 232. just for you guys to kind of hear it. And I know you're probably like, darn, I wish we could do a role play. I feel so left out. And maybe we'll get there, but
If you have a book,
if you have a book, you can follow along.
that's right.
Dan, I don't know which one you'd like to be, but do you have your book?
I don't have a
Okay.
book.
So Robin, or
Robin.
Tammy, yes.
Awesome. There we go.
You can take Dan's mic.
Oh, wait, no, she's giving me the book. She doesn't want to read.
No excuse, sir.
No martyr.
Can you see it?
Barely.
232?
Sure. The lighting up here is hard to read.
Okay.
Yeah,
you-
sure.
Okay.
I'm good. Go ahead.
So I'll start. I'll be the person that's the abortion proponent. The government shouldn't tell me what I can do with my own body, Dan.
Well, I think that's generally true, but can the government say what you can do with your body concerning your 2-year-old?
Well, that's different. He's outside my body. We're talking about my uterus. They can't dictate what I do with my own uterus any more than they can force me to donate my kidneys.
Well, I agree with you,
You
but
fascist.
well, what does that have to do with pro-life view? Do you think pro-lifers are asking you to give up your uterus?
No, but they want to tell me what I can do with my uterus.
It seems to me there's a misunderstanding here. Let me clarify. Pro-lifers are saying the government should be able to protect a separate human being growing inside your body just as it does a separate human being growing outside of your body.
But we're talking about my uterus, not a human being like an infant.
Well, I thought we were talking about what was in your uterus.
Okay, but that's not a human being.
It isn't? Then what is it?
It's just a blob of tissues, Dan.
Sure, but aren't we all blobs of tissue?
That's different too.
How exactly?
We're living people, not just tissue. Anyway, nobody knows. See, that's good smokescreen.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask a few questions about this mysterious thing inside the uterus of a pregnant woman?
Go ahead.
Is this thing alive?
No one really knows when life begins, Dan.
That wasn't quite the question I asked. If it was alive, not when life begins. So let me ask it another way. Is this unidentified thing inside a pregnant woman's uterus growing?
Yes, it's growing.
How can it be growing if it's not alive?
Well, you've made your point. It's alive, it's living tissue, part of my own body, and the government has no say over my tissue growing in my body, Dan.
I'm sympathetic with that point, in principle, but I don't think this tissue that is in your body is part of your body, strictly speaking.
Well, of course it is.
Did you ever watch CSI?
Where you go? What? Yeah, sure.
Okay. When the forensic pathologist finds remains of a human body, how do they know which person the remains belong to?
Well, generally do DNA matches and tests and things like that.
Right. If the DNA from the tissue matches the DNA sample from a known individual, then they know the tissue was part of their body.
That's right.
Okay, so if you were pregnant and someone took a DNA test of a piece of the tissue growing in your uterus, would its DNA match your DNA?
Well, no, but they could tell it was from part of me.
Right. Then whatever's growing inside of your body when you're pregnant is not part of your body, is it? It has different DNA, so it must be tissue from a different body. Does that make sense to you?
I don't want to say yes, but I guess so.
So here's the next question. What kind of foreign thing would be growing inside your uterus if you weren't
I
pregnant?
can't say for sure.
Well, let's go back to CSI again. The forensic pathologist found a piece of tissue at a crime scene. How would they know if that tissue came from a human being or from some other creature?
You know they would do a DNA test.
Right. But this test isn't looking to identify a certain individual, but rather a certain kind of individual. Maybe a human or maybe some other organism, right?
Yeah, okay.
So if we took a piece of tissue from that living thing growing in your uterus that is not you, but something else, what kind of DNA do you think it would have?
I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Another smokescreen.
Yeah. I don't think you need to be a scientist to know the answer to this question. Let me ask it another way. What kinds of things naturally and predictably grow inside of a pregnant woman's uterus?
Offspring.
Good.
Notice I
So,
didn't say baby.
yeah,
Offspring.
correct.
I'm not going to say that, Dan.
Right.
Offspring.
So we agree on this, though. Now, if there's an offspring growing in a woman's uterus, what kind of offspring do you think it is?
I guess it would be human offspring. But that doesn't mean it's a human being. After all, the unborn doesn't look like a human being, does it, Dan?
Sure she does. She looks exactly the way all human beings look at that stage of development. Look at your baby pictures, then look at your high school graduation pictures, then look at you now. Do you look the same?
No, I wish I looked when I did when I was high school, but no.
Right. But do you see the point? Living things never look the same at one stage of development as they do at another stage, do they?
Yeah, well, that's still different.
Okay, let me put it another way. If you had a cat that was pregnant, what kind of fetus would it be carrying?
A cat fetus.
Right.
But an acorn is not an oak, is it, Dan?
Right. What is it?
It's a seed.
Agreed. What kind of seed?
An oak seed, Dan.
Right. An acorn is an oak in the seed stage, and a full-grown tree is an oak in a mature stage. But they're both oak, right?
But the unborn is just a zygote or a fetus or whatever.
Right. But what kind of zygote or fetus or whatever?
Human.
Exactly. Do living things change from one kind of being into another over time, or do they stay themselves?
I guess they stay the same thing from beginning to end. I think that's true.
Right. So it looks like we knew a lot about what's growing inside a pregnant woman's uterus, don't we? It's not merely her tissue, but her human offspring. Someone else, an unborn human being, is in there at varying stages of development. So now that we've solved that mystery, let me take a step further. Do you think the government should be allowed to protect your offspring when the child is outside your body, but not when it's inside your body?
Yes, I do.
Tell me, why would the government be allowed to protect your offspring on the outside of your body? Say, child abuse and stuff like that.
Because children are valuable.
Right, I agree. But that creates a problem for you now, doesn't it?
How does it create a problem for me?
Well, if your children are valuable outside of your body, say right after they're born, why aren't they those same children valuable just a couple of inches away, hidden inside your body? Why does the mere location of your child make any difference to the value of your child?
Right. And so that was a really long one, so thank me for not allowing you guys to do that.
And you had me read all of it. You're just one-liners.
And I'm really glad you chose what you chose because I had the fun part.
Yeah.
I could ham it up.
Uterus. Thank you for loaning your book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you are successful in showing your friend that premise number 2 is correct, and the unborn is an actual human, then the only recourse for them is to attack premise number 1. It is wrong to intentionally take the life of an innocent human being. So, what should I do if my friend counters with, it's not really wrong to kill a human being, it's only wrong to kill a human person? The unborn are not real persons, they are only potential persons. Ooh, what do you think about that? How would you attack that kind of statement? What do you mean by that? What else? What's the difference between a real person and a potential person? That's a good question. That's a clarifying question, and that's the first tactic, our first kind of questions. What questions? What do you mean by that? What's the difference between real and potential? Right? Then you go, how do you know that's right? Right? What kind of evidence do you have to support that? Yes, we'll get to that. What if your mom did that to you? We'll get that at the end.
But that's a
last kind of question. But any other way that you kind of would handle that, do you think? how would you respond to someone that said it's not really wrong to kill a human being, it's only wrong to kill a human person, and babies are not real persons, they're only potential persons? Yeah. Harp on the potential, right? And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of what's in the fetus, a human being. And they want to skirt that and go somewhere else. It's just a potential person. Yes, it's human. It's not really a human being yet because it's potential there. So it's not really killing a person, so to say. Ray, did you want to say something? Yeah. Do you? That's going to get a fight. Do you like to rationalize things in your own favor? What do you mean by that? You hate women, right?
Oh.
Right. Yeah, a woman sure can be against it. Just not a good woman. That's all, right? I think they just want it to be, well, they want you to be able to choose. If you don't want to kill a baby, you don't have to kill a baby. It's your choice. If you want to, you should be able to. Any reason. California, New York, right? So at this point, you should ask and must ask, what is the difference between that real person and the only potential person? Have him spell it out. Be prepared for other side kind of avenues and more smoke screens, because it's not something that's comfortable, and they probably haven't thought about it. I can guarantee you, most of the people that would take this position have not thought past that. They're just used to people saying, "Oh, yeah, it's only potential," and then going on their merry way. Oh, don't have to deal with that. Don't have to come up with anything that makes sense. It's logical. Press them on it, right? Not as a jerk, right? No, what you mean by that? You're an idiot. Tell me what you mean, right? That's different. We're not going for that approach, right? So, those who offer the personhood qualifier, and that's what this is, divide the human race into two categories: the human persons and human non-persons. The first group has full protection under the law. The second group can be killed for virtually any reasons, right? At this point, more questions will be needed. I'm having a hard time just turning my pages here. This is crazy. I know. Well, people lick their fingers to do it, and it drives me insane. I hate seeing that. I'm like, that's disgusting, bro. Right?
So you want somebody else to lick your fingers?
If someone else could lick my fingers, that.
It's gross if
What
he
is
licks his
happening
own
to this
fingers.
study today?
Yeah.
We're off the rails.
Yeah.
All right. Summer's here. The weather's been nice. We're kind of
Right,
losing
right.
it. Okay. So what are some of the questions that we can consider? Well, how is this determined? This human list and the non-human, potential human list. How do we determine who gets on that list? Who makes the decision between valuable and disposable, right? How can someone on the disposable list make it to the valuable list? What characteristics or qualities make someone more valuable than the disposable person? What about older lists? Should those lists be consulted? And what I mean by that specifically, the LGBTQ, black people, Jews, Serbians, gypsies, mentally disabled people, were all considered human non-persons at some point in history. So when did that switch, and should it have been switched, right? What makes one list superior to the others? Now, the personhood game has a very dark past in history. We've talked about some of that. It's been used throughout history to disqualify certain groups from the human family, and by disqualifying them, all kinds of abuses against them are justified and permitted. So understand what Satan is doing here. He's using the same deception, the same word games, the same logical inconsistencies, the same kind of moral relativism that he always uses. And the reason for that is he's not really creative. He doesn't have to be, because they work in every generation. And that generation dies out, and he's got a whole bunch of new gullible people he can deceive. Because we can't see the patterns from 100 years ago, most of us are not concerned about that. Most of us haven't lived through that. But if you ask some of the old timers, they're not getting deceived by that because they saw how it transpired. They're like, that's not right, right? But on a fresh mind that doesn't know, they are fair game. I want you to know something, that the demonic are predators. They are predatory. And so they don't care about humanity. They are considered underneath them. They don't compare to the angelic, to the spiritual sense. Your body is of flesh, you're disgusting. They want to destroy you. Why? Because you were made in the image of God. So that is their goal, is to destroy. They cannot hurt God directly. They are no challenge to him. Understand it. He is supernatural. They are created beings. Now, they're more powerful than us. They're smarter than us. They see all things. They see patterns we cannot. They use what's effective, and they use it over and over and over again. Right? Rest assured, they want you dead and in hell. Why? Because that's the only way they can get back at God. Because they know he values us. And we were made in his image. They weren't, we were. And they can't stand that. So they're going to destroy, they're going to deceive, they're going to ensnare whomever, wherever, whenever. They don't rest it, they don't have to sleep. They will keep coming to drag as many as they can to hell, to destroy as many of those that were created in the image of God as they can. Abortion is that way. In the eras gone by, in the eons in the past, we had nations that would sacrifice the children on the altars. Baal was one of them. He was a bronze statue with arms outstretched, and what they would do is they'd put their babies on the burning hot hands, and the babies would roll themselves into the fire. And they would beat the drums to drown out the screams. Well, we don't do that anymore. Oh no, not in those ceremonies. There's no more priests that are sacrificing children. They're not dressed in that garb anymore. Now they have scrubs on. And now they tear babies apart, not in fire, but in the womb, and you can't hear the cries. Same thing is happening. The same deception is happening as it did way back with the Canaanites and all those before. It's the same thing. They want to destroy. And you know, the terrible thing is they're getting us to agree that it's with them and to do it for them. I don't have to do anything. All I got to do is sit back. Now it's our right to murder. It's our right. Yeah, deception.
And sacrifice for the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So that their God will give them a better life.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Sacrificing a child. Yeah.
Oh. So there is such a thing called the sled test. And so I wanted to talk about that. We're almost done. Probably got about 15 minutes or so. The sled test. The unborn are generally disqualified within one of 4 categories. And here's the categories. Their size, physical appearance, that's the S in sled. Their level of development, they lack abilities real people have. So level of development is L. E is the environment. They're not in the same place as real people. And D is the degree of dependency. They cannot survive on their own. Size, level of development, environment, and dependency. Those are the 4 areas that babies are disqualified and made not human or subhuman. So this list of distinctions has many holes as a qualifier, which makes the unborn non-human. It also disqualifies real human people already born. That's the whole. So the same kind of way that people, proponents for abortion, will use to disqualify the unborn and make them non-human, it also disqualifies real living people. So we can bring that out, right? So, size, we'll do first one. Size or physical appearance. Well, the argument is, well, the unborn don't look like real people, therefore they're not real people. And so could anybody see the error there, the flaw? They don't look like real people. They're smaller, right? What happens if someone has a deformed arm? Or no legs? Do you remember the Elephant Man? He didn't look like a person, really. He would look really odd, right? What about the mentally disabled? What about the physically disabled, right? Here's the thing. Human worth transcends physical appearance, skin color, size, disfigurement, disability. But physical form is irrelevant to value. Would you say a little person was not human because of their size? No, of course not. Nobody would say that. Was renowned physicist Stephen Hawking any less human just because he could not talk? It was in a wheelchair? Would you say it's okay to kill Stephen? Well, he's dead now. But it was okay to kill Stephen Hawking because he wasn't in the size or had some of the abilities that other humans had? Did that make him less human? Of course not. Sometimes human bodies look odd or unusual, but the person is still there. Size doesn't matter. Does that make sense? Let's go to the number 2 thing that is used to disqualify people. Their level of development, or just their development. So here's the argument. The unborn lack the abilities real people have. So does a newborn. What else? If you want to get fired, I would say.
Yeah.
That might work on someone that had a real kind of a developmental disability. That might resonate more with them, right? It could backfire too, so you have to be kind of careful there. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Yeah. So let me ask this question, right? How many body parts or abilities can I lose to qualify as non-human? So how many body parts or abilities would I need to lose to then come from real person, real valuable person, into the non-human realm? That's a good question to ask. Or you could ask of them, how many body parts would you have to lose, or abilities would you have to lose to cease being human and now be non-human? Brain activity, they might say. They might say. Well, generally, if the brain stops functioning, the heart will not, unless you're on a ventilator or something like that, and a machine to regulate, right? So that would be the definition of death, is when your brain activity is gone, and we can artificially keep people alive. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about when are they not human. So let me ask you this. You have a relative that dies. Are they not human? Is that body no longer human? It's still human. It's just a deceased body, right? You don't put them in the category of subhuman. You put them in the category of deceased. So even when all ability is gone, we don't take it away.
Well,
right?
Even if he was brain dead but on a ventilator and everything
Right.
and running, you still would consider that body still human.
Right, you consider the body still human. So then, can I come into that moment and snuff up a pillow over his face? Rip out everything? Right? No, I can't. Well, maybe some states I could, and it wouldn't surprise me if New York was one of them.
People in comas?
Yeah.
Can you just snuff out people in a coma?
Can you snuff out people in a coma? So here's some of the body part list, right? Sight, your eyes. Are you human then? If you don't have any eyes or you're blind. Speech, your vocal cords. If you can't say anything, do you cease to be human? Your legs. You can't walk. Normal people can walk. Do you cease to be human? In every case, I remain human. In every single case. Do human beings become disposable simply because they cannot do what other people can do? The answer should be no. Do stronger, more intelligent, more capable people have more rights than me? Should they have more rights than those who are disabled? This would be an absurd line of thinking. However, this is the line of reason people take when they apply it to the unborn. They would never do that in any other circumstance. Never. Right? Let's look at the next one. Environment. The unborn are not in the same place as real people. So therefore they're not human. What would be the error here? Well, where you are has no bearing on who you are.
Astronauts don't stop being human in outer
Right.
space.
Astronauts don't stop being human. If I come up from a dive too quick and need to be in a hyperbaric chamber, people really aren't there. Am I not human in the chamber and then human when I come out? Where you are should have no bearing on who you are. So the foolishness of this can be seen in hospitals where doctors rush to save the life of a 1 pound 6 ounce preemie, but exterminate the life of a 1 pound 6 ounce baby simply because it still resides in the mother's womb. The average birth canal is between 2 to 5 inches. This is the dividing line that transforms a non-human or human non-person from a valuable human person. Tell me, what magic happens between those 2 to 5 inches that all of a sudden that non-human becomes human, that unvaluable becomes valuable? What happens? They can breathe air. Whoop-de-doo. Right? Yeah. It's barbaric. Right?
And if they get caught up on that 2 to 5 inches, there are C-sections and they don't actually.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, some people say, oh, it has to,
It has to.
Yeah.
Why?
That's what makes it human.
What is it about that
Yeah.
that makes it human or not human?
Right.
There's no scientific example for that.
Right.
It's just conjecture or some philosophical hoo-ha stuff, right? Excuse. So let's talk about the fourth category, and that is degree of dependency. So the argument is the unborn is too physically dependent on others to be a person. Where's the error in that? As people become older, they become more dependent. Are they non-persons?
Ben and I wouldn't be persons then if we didn't have our wives. I mean,
Right. Some of us can't do anything without our wives. Right?
I wouldn't be able to cook.
Right? Any newborn infant is completely dependent on parent.
Yeah.
A
Right.
2-year-old is dependent on their parent.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
my 13-year-old can't survive outside of us too. She's way too dependent.
Yeah.
My 19-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know the amount of money we put forth this year,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
But that whole trotting out the toddler.
yes, go ahead.
These defend that's what you could use a lot of these with when they
Yep.
use these excuses.
So even with
Because-
the level of development, well, guess what? You're not really fully formed. At least your brain's not fully formed until your mid-20s. Can I snuff you out if you're 23 and your brain's still development? You're not like a real person who's already developed.
Or a disabled toddler,
Yeah.
even if you wanted to go that route.
And my 83-year-old father-in-law, his mental decline is there. He's not as limber with his memory or his brain or even his body that he was even 10 years ago. Is he now a non-person? It's absurd. It's like stupidity. But we don't question these, and we should. Go ahead, Glenn. Yep.
Doctors, farmers, I mean, you can go and look at it, plumbers, whatever. We're dependent on that unless you can do it all yourself.
We're all dependent on somebody. So again, toddlers cannot survive on their own without total dependence on their parents. We still consider them persons. The severely disabled cannot survive without dependency on their caretakers. They're still persons. The severely injured or sick cannot survive without dependency on caretakers. They're still persons. The most elderly cannot survive without major dependency on their caretakers, but nobody would say they're not real persons. It's absurd.
Except the one person I had a conversation with actually said,
there would be probably some.
yeah, there are some, like some of them, it depends on the conversation, so you should be ready for that too, because you kind of steer them into a corner where they can't back out of it, and they might just say, yeah, the elderly should just be
Wiped out
as well,
Yeah.
because they're not contributing to anything in their,
Yeah. Well, the homeless,
in the homeless, yeah,
the poor,
yeah.
right? I mean, you could get them
You could
doing all kinds of atrocities.
Yeah.
Agreeing.
Yeah. And sometimes they just get backed into a corner.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you need to back off too, because
Yeah.
they get really upset, and you can just find, at that point I was like just trying to find common ground, and like,
Yep.
okay, after a heartbeat, they were like, yeah, I wouldn't do abortion. Okay, well, that's something. I think most Christians, if you could have eliminated all abortions when a heartbeat happened, would save
that'd be a big
tons. That'd be a huge win.
Right.
So
So human beings are dependent on others for survival, but they are not dependent on others for their value. Because if that was the case, if we depended on others for our value, then people on ventilators become disposable, people on kidney machines become disposable, anyone in assisted living would become disposable. Most of our people would be disposable. We could make a case for it at least, right? So remember the basic strategy. The unborn are alive. The unborn is not the same as the mother. It's an individual being. The unborn is a human being. And we cannot disqualify human beings based on their size, their level of development, their environment, or their dependency. That's the game plan, right, when we come on to this. So the final question. This is the final question when all other questions have been asked in this way. Ask the question, were you ever an unborn child? Of course. If you were once the unborn child your mother carried, then you must accept an undeniable truth. Killing that child through abortion would have killed you. Not a potential you, not a future you. Abortion would have killed you. Boom. Mic drop. Okay, that's all I have for today. Any questions on that? Anybody want to argue for abortion here? Didn't think so. It's one of those days. I've been here all day. I'm ready. All right. How do we feel about this? Would you like to do a lengthy role play together? No? Okay. Next week. So we'll probably do a role play next week to end it. That's on sex, gender, and marriage. Another hot button topic. Is gender fluid? I don't know. Stay tuned. Should marriage be between only a man and a woman? Should it be between two men, two women, three women and a man? Three women, two men? Right, what is that about? And is all sex outside of marriage wrong? What about homosexual sex when they love each other and it's consensual and it's mutual? Is love? These are the things we're going to talk about. So just for you guys, just to whet your appetite, we will talk about this next week. And then in June, we're going to have Pastor Terry cover most of the Wednesday night services. Terry King, and I will be filling in for him on the days that he preaches. So once a month I'll be back, and we'll be going through some biblical books like Jude and maybe 1 Timothy, things like that. Okay?
I do have a twofer for the abortion and what we're talking about.
Oh, go for it, Dan.
In one of the conversations I had with somebody, because you talked about a lot of this, and then they just got mad and said, well, you can't talk on this because you don't have a uterus. But then and not in my best judgment column next one. It was all typed just on Facebook, right?
How do you know?
No, I said, does that mean a transgender man isn't really a woman? He can't really have the discussion on this? And
Ooh, that hurts.
yeah, they didn't talk to me anymore after that. I think I was eliminated from the conversation, but
The old, what is a woman? What is a man?
yeah, I used that against them. They didn't like the fact that I.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Dan, would you mind praying for us to
Sure.
to exit here? I don't know, dismiss, not exit.
This Max.
I've been here like 12 hours. I'm ready.
It's a long day for
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you. We thank you for this time. We could just learn how to witness, how to share the lies the devil is telling the world. We don't want to see people being lost, people going to hell, children being lost, lives being ruined. We ask that the information that we get, that you would bring it to our remembrance when these conversations happen in our lives. We ask that you would bring the people that need to hear the word, people that need to see the light, that we have opportunities to speak to them and share who you are and the greatness that you have for them. We ask that you bless all of us. Safe travels home. In your mighty name, amen.
Amen. Just a shameless plug for Sunday. We're talking about Exodus chapter 4 and the Christian discipline of obedience. So I'll see you then. 10 a.m. only.